I don't have an intro. The Mario Kart Battle Pass has released. All of it. After 2 long years, all 6 waves are finally in the game. So I figured it would be fun to wrap up this series I've been doing with a big retrospective for all the tracks. Look at their strengths, weaknesses, what makes them special, and what they can mean for the future of the series. Of course, with just how much content was added to the game, the best way to do that was to break up the courses into 5 separate categories, to better highlight their attributes, but also to save time, honestly. The first of which are the courses that aren't too demanding. Low energy levels, both in what they are, and how they make me feel. Most of these tracks are pretty flat, with no real content, making for a very quiet race. Maps like Sky Garden and Mario Circuit 3 have almost nothing to say, can be done without a second thought, and are over so quickly it makes me wonder why they're even here in the first place. Standing at the top of this list are tracks like Shroom Ridge, where it offers some sort of challenge with its traffic. Besides blind nostalgia, there isn't anything keeping me on these courses. I'll be honest, these tracks are so minimalistic that I don't even have material to complain about. There's literally nothing going on. And that's due to the fact that they weren't really updated to the modern age. These fun little tracks would have been a lot more impactful had they not been placed alongside ones with more intuitive designs. I love Sunset Wilds, yet it felt dry when both the courses before and after it were much more colorful. If it were placed earlier in the DLC with stuff like Choco Mountain, Toad Circuit, or Snowland, may have been appreciated more. This was the case with the first 3 waves, giving room to the easier selections before drifting into the ones that made more noise. It made it feel like the DLC was expanding as it released, until the pattern changed with the bottom row, making the waves more even. Sprawling out the basic tracks removed their charm, and they ended up feeling like filler just stuck in between other courses. None of this is benefited by the fact that these courses come from earlier Mario Kart games. Their original layouts are pretty much already stale since they were made before the series got creative. Relative to where Mario Kart is now, they're not that exciting. That's what filters out this handful from the second genre of track, something we'll call the standard. These tracks aren't the biggest or baddest, but do have the advantage of coming from Mario Kart games that were more intricate with their level designs. This means that the base layout has enough content to survive with little to no additions. A lot of the courses that fall under this category are often regarded as classics, which is funny because most of them come from Wii. Mushroom Gorge, DK Mountain, Moonview Highway, they're all timeless, giving not only a unique experience, but throwing in enough of a challenge to entice the player. This group is among the best their respective titles have to offer, and it's pretty easy to see why they don't need many adjustments. Some may even go as far to say that updating the tracks would hinder what made them classics in the first place. Cowards. However, in this category, even if they do incorporate newer elements, it's usually placed to where it fits in seamlessly, like with Koopa Cape and how I predicted that it would have anti-gravity underwater. A lot of the tracks were also in Mario Kart 7, the game where modern gimmicks originated. Their designs may already incorporate some of the features expected from the Booster Course Pass. Rosalina's Ice World is built around water, and Rock Mountain is a beautiful display of the gliding ability as is. They didn't need to change those. I also want to mention Maple Treeway. Not because of anything specific, I just wanted to mention Maple Treeway. But it is a great example of how, despite not being as expansive, it can carry just as much weight as the other tracks in the DLC. With how often I find myself jumping through the waves to play these specific tracks, I'd say they make up the core experience of the Booster Course Pass, not putting any wave therein at a disadvantage by staggering the flow, like the aforementioned Mario Circuits. There's not even like a trick ramp. But what about the retro tracks that do go higher, further, and or faster with their concepts? Ones like Calamari Desert rounding up the 3rd tier of the Battle Pass, the Reinvented courses. Being another course that was in Mario Kart 7, Calamari Desert was a track I spent hours on, each race daydreaming about following the train. They call me CJ. Now that it's been revived by the Booster Course Pass, the level has been redesigned using elements from Tour to make that very task possible. These are the maps that have been flipped on their heads, expanding on their concepts to produce an entirely new experience. Like Peach Gardens, for example. Hold on. Peach Gardens is not only a clever pun, but also a pretty open area. Naturally, it uses the extra space to create a new pathway for the last lap. I know I talked a whole lot about this track before, but if I can retread some of that for a second, I love how they were able to reinvent Peach Gardens. It's always been one of my top picks from Wii, and seeing the second life it was given really made me wonder why the DLC didn't do this more often. Additions following suit of what we saw in Peach Gardens could have done so much more for the basic tracks, spicing them up instead of letting them melt into mediocrity. And that very notion is proven by Boo Lake, actually utilizing the lake part of Boo Lake and sinking half the track to achieve something some of the older maps couldn't: being fun. A picture-perfect example of expanding the concept. Courses in this category show how a Mario Kart map can evolve, by far being among the most intriguing and exciting from the DLC, which, again, it's such a shame they're so limited in number, making only 3 of the 48 tracks. In fact, 2 of them come from the same wave, creating a nasty imbalance in what each DLC release brought to the table. Wave 3 is out here reinventing the meta, and Wave 1 is lucky to even get a chair. It's just so sad, because part of the fun for each Mario Kart installment was seeing the selection of retro tracks and how they would be brought into the new era. The base game for Mario Kart 8, even extending back to the initial Wii U release, did a fantastic job at translating older tracks to the modern age. Not all of them had major redesigns, however the ones that did set the bar for the franchise moving forward. Honestly, the Booster Course Pass just hasn't kept up with that momentum. Maybe that's where, for me at least, some of the disappointment stems from. When you know the base game from a decade ago did better with Piranha Plant Slide than the update 2 months ago did with Rosalina's Ice World, it makes you question the integrity of the Booster Course Pass. All I'm saying is that if you're gonna charge extra and make me wait 2 full years, it should be better than what I had 10 years ago. If this was the route the Booster Course Pass continued to follow, then it quickly would have put itself into a pit. Luckily, this issue was balanced out by the inclusion of what makes our 4th list: original courses. Now I know that these are technically from Mario Kart Tour, so they aren't brand new. However, from the perspective of someone that deleted that app, the original courses. Starting out with the one that did the least, Sky High Sundae. Not a bad course, it has its worth, but kinda hard to overlook the fact that it's really just an oval. Mixing up the race with gliding while also keeping the entire thing in anti-gravity holds its head above water, definitely. Being one of the only tracks in the entirety of Mario Kart 8 to do this is unfortunately as far as I could extend its credits. Cool, but not notable. Overall, it just doesn't really feel like it gives a lot with its layout. Even Ninja Hideaway, which came out before Sky High, is more intelligent in its design. The open layout being what pulls everything together. There's a multitude of different ways to move through the track, and that's what continues to make it stand out. While other maps may have alternate pathways entangled throughout, Ninja Hideaway is the only one where each route is a different interpretation of the race. No 2 laps will be played the same, unless you are specifically trying to make them the same. Moving more to Muse on Merry Mountain, it's another track that relies on a straightforward loop. The benefit it has against Sky High Sundae is that there's a little bit more creativity with it. Not only the layout, but how you move along it. Case in point, the half pipes. Being one of the tracks to showcase the returning feature from Wii gave Merry Mountain something that the previous waves didn't. It utilized a feature the entire rest of the game was lacking. On top of that, this creativity is certainly boosted by its theming of a holiday. Maybe it's not the most intuitive track, but there is something to say about its charm. Every once in a while, a Mario Kart map will just resonate with you and become a regular in your playlist. Even if it isn't the most expansive or engaging, there's a novelty to it. Of all the original courses from the Booster Course Pass, Merry Mountain is undoubtedly that track. Much like Baby Park or Moo Moo Meadows, it's dumb fun that subjectively holds it up with the best of the series. The spirit of Merry Mountain is what keeps me from calling it dull, even if I acknowledge that it isn't the most exciting of the 6. Kinda like Hawkeye, because that title may very well have to go to Yoshi's Island. I don't know if this will make sense, but it feels the most Mario Kart out of all of them. An oddity with the original courses from Mario Kart 8 is that they didn't have the sense that they fell into the theme of the Mario franchise. There's a lot of courses throughout history that seem disjointed, but what even is Water Park? Yoshi's Island brings home that Mario identity, being exactly what you would expect from a map that explores the mythos. Not a train station. I yapped about it in a video already, so I won't repeat myself. Yoshi's Island is the type of design expected from future entries if the Mario Kart franchise continues. Something that utilizes the gimmicks and balances them out along the course, having everything it needs to become a staple map in the series. Words I wish I could say for the track that followed in the next update. Squeaky Clean Sprint is alright. While it does run opposite to what I just said about the theme of Mario, the bathroom aesthetic gives a perfect space for the underwater feature to thrive. The map revolves around the gimmick, floating through a bathtub, drifting through drains. The design is undeniably creative. Any Mario Kart track that could adequately throw a toilet into the mix is a Mario Kart track that's done its job. Sadly, it doesn't do much more than its job. Squeaky Clean is a fair track, just not sharp enough to make as big of an impact as the other original courses. Ninja Hideaway and Yoshi's Island, for comparison, each part has its own thing to throw at you. Squeaky Clean's layout gets stale much faster because of how straightforward the sections are. Racing between the tub, counter, sink, and floor would do more as a concept if they weren't nearly identical spaces. Falling into the same boat as Sky High Sundae, Squeaky Clean puts all its money into one gimmick and does a bit too much of the same thing, resulting in a track that, although not bad, doesn't accomplish as much as its counterparts. So now what's the opposite of that? What's a map that does accomplish as much as possible? Piranha Plant Cove. Where to even begin with this one? Realistically, anything in this game, starting with Piranha Plant, is gonna be a banger. This map is an exploration. It's a story, constantly changing as you progress through the race. Each lap is a different part of the map entirely. I mean, look at this layout. That's insane! The pathways are their own independent routes, and for the small sections where they do intersect, the course does a good job at mixing things around so you aren't following too much of the same pattern. My favorite example of that would be this jump here, where you soar over this opening, eventually returning to it on the last lap to trek deeper down the map. It's a fun bit of foreshadowing, but it also shows the versatility that a Mario Kart track could have. Piranha Plant Cove makes another great use of the underwater ability, with the map almost exclusively taking place under the waves. The theme of exploring the sunken ruins uses the gimmick to its fullest. Much like Squeaky Clean, it's nice to see tracks that are built around the concept instead of just throwing water somewhere and calling it a night. Piranha Plant Cove is definitely the standout of the 6, and I think it shows the potential that Mario Kart tracks have in the future. Now, originally, I was going to wrap the tour tracks up with the other genres, yet one night I got bored and wrote a 600-word rant about them, so we're here now. The Mario Kart games work so well because they aren't traditional racing games. The magic of Mario Kart is the immensely imaginative world of the Super Mario franchise. What makes the game so fun is being able to race through all these wildly different locations and the many challenges that they bring. Whether it's sailing the streets of Toad Harbor, battling at the depths of the ocean, drifting through a mall, or escaping a deadly castle, each map has its own identity, its own song to sing, its own piece of that imagination. That is the aspect of Mario Kart where the tour tracks start to struggle. Being based on real locations, they naturally lose that creative intuition that the series is known for. Even the worst Mario Kart stages still have that wonder to them. There's a toad cheering you on from the endless, flourishing greens. And then there's London. These maps hold a personality that feels so distant from the rest of the game, and that's why they miss the mark. Because they're never truly aiming for it. While some of the tracks do great with their concepts, their repetitive theming kept them all singing the same song. Racing through a real-world city is cool, just not 14 times cool. Yeah, 14 out of 48. Sit on that for a second. All of the tour tracks work on the same principle, and when you include multiple each wave, the game quickly becomes littered with the same idea. Their formulaic placing didn't help either. They weren't mixed in like every other course, only ever being first or last in the cup. Doing that made the tour tracks feel more like an obligation, filler to hit a quota, rather than something to actually be excited about. I'll tell you from my personal experience, at the start, I wasn't expecting the tour tracks to be in every cup. Seeing them continue to be released this way, it got to a point where they didn't even feel real.
I know that road. What is this?
Each update was like, okay, well, I'm probably gonna hate 2 of these. They were the video game equivalent of getting a glass of water before ordering your drink at a restaurant. So, as previously stated, that's part of the reason the later half of the DLC felt watered down. Not only were the releases formulaic, but the courses were too. This problem prospered once they started putting more tour maps in each wave. To give credit, the newer selections were becoming more diverse with what they had to offer. It wasn't just the same streets anymore, there was actual weight to them. It made the tour tracks less homogeneous, which sort of balanced out the increased amount. However, it didn't change the fact that they were still taking slots away from proper retro tracks, the stuff we really wanted. Part of the fun of the Booster Course Pass was predicting what we would see. How were they so accurate? I remember watching other creators' videos talking about what they wanted to see and if they would get a second chance on their favorite courses. This was the hype, and to see more and more of the DLC populated by tour tracks, it significantly killed that hype. Rome is cool, but it'll never be Toad's Factory. And seeing how it looks like people were willing to make videos based on where Toad's Factory was, it's clear that the Booster Course Pass wasn't holding up for a lot of people. Creators like Nathaniel Bandy and Introspective were the ones that I watched the most, and I noticed how they just kinda stopped talking about the DLC. Not to mention that making videos on the Booster Course Pass myself, it elevated any feelings towards it. Seeing a track with new changes meant a new thing to discuss, so when the DLC kept getting maps that all share the same themes, the game became so streamlined that it wasn't even fun to complain about. That's honestly why this video took so long. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't typecast. And I was playing Spider-Man. Throughout all of the Booster Course Pass, I think we all know what the very best track is. The one that puts them all to shame. Bowser's Castle? Why, you might ask? Well, because I couldn't figure out what category to put it in, and then I forgot. So it's here now, the secret 6th category, the, Yeah, it's weird, because this is a track I predicted, and I forgot to place it. It's just, the map very clearly is updated, but they didn't do it in a way that actually plays into any of the gimmicks. So it's like, where does it go? But now, because of that, it has its own segment, so no harm, I guess. Now that we've pretty much reviewed all the tracks, how did their placements affect each wave of the Booster Course Pass? Which one of the 6 releases made the biggest impact on the game, offering up a collection of courses with the most content? It's a bit of a tough question, because it mostly comes down to which maps you consider to be the best. But I do think it's safe to say that some waves did more than others. The very first wave held the most excitement for me. It was the start of the journey, and the sheer excitement of new content is what still makes it special to this day. Its roster isn't half bad, solid first impression for what the Booster Course had in store. Of course, Toad Circuit and Coconut Mall were standouts from the rest. Mario Kart 7 was a game I battled my friends in all the time, and reliving these 2 courses propelled my appreciation for this wave. The only thing really holding it back is that it's filled to the brim with basic courses, being the wave with the most of them. The cups don't have too much to give you if you aren't doing a casual run, and that's something that translates to the second wave. Over here, they started to push the boundaries with Mushroom Gorge and Waluigi Pinball. However, I don't feel like its selection was that much higher than the first wave. The excitement this time around was wobbly. Wave 2 managed to provide us with both some of the best and worst the Booster Course had to show. The top example being Mario Circuit 3, immediately followed by the revamped Calamari Desert. Quite the imbalance. Because of that, these are the cups that I feel most neutral to. As someone who frequents Versus mode, where you can choose maps individually, I only ever pick 2 or 3 courses from here. The Booster Course Pass didn't start to hit its stride until the next update. Wave 3 has to be the best of the 6, as it offers up a greater range of courses. A rock solid selection that was an absolute blast to play for the first time. Fast-paced tracks that have a proper balance of challenge and a chill nature to them, like Maple Treeway. Again, no specific notes, just wanted to mention it. These maps are the ones I find to be in my rotation most often. They're simply impossible to hate. The tour tracks are admittedly closer to the bottom of the barrel than the top, yet they still have enough variety to where I'm not completely brain dead. Life support, sure, but my wife still has hope. Wave 3 also has the most reinvented courses, again with Boo Garden and Peach Lake, throwing 1 in each cup. Just goes to show that Wave 3 put in the most effort when it came to expanding on the experience. And finally, there's Merry Mountain. The holiday aspect of it made it like a tradition to come back to. My bar for a holiday tradition is very low. Wave 3 is the only one that felt like it truly delivered the most that it could, especially as the conclusion to the 2022 run of the Booster Course Pass. It may not be everything the DLC had to show, but it's certainly the closest any wave was to it. Now, what does that leave for the 2023 releases? The credit I could give Wave 5 is that playing it had a similar excitement to the first wave. Its selection of tracks were big ones I played in previous titles. Daisy Circuit, Moonview Highway, belonging to hours of my life. And then of course my long-awaited Canada, which I still can't really believe got added. Canada, along with Los Angeles and Athens, are among the better city courses, taking place in wildly different locations that are versatile in their themes. Sunset Wilds is still a vibe, and Squeaky Clean I've made my peace with. I had as much fun with Wave 5 as I did Wave 3, but sadly it marks the last time the DLC really got me excited for anything. Despite how much I like Wave 5, the later half of the Booster Course Pass hit a fatigue to where it wasn't pulling as much as the previous year. Wave 4 didn't have bad tracks, however, they weren't on par with what Wave 3 gave us. Immediately following stuff like Rainbow Road put it at a natural disadvantage to where it just couldn't match the energy. As mentioned, there was little variety in how a lot of the bottom row implemented tracks. There was no sense of working up in difficulty, so the cups sort of plateaued in excitement. It was hard to get invested in Wave 6 when it offered the same experience as Wave 4, 5, or 2. I'll admit, I only played Wii Rainbow Road once since it released. I also think that as a final update to close out 2023, the selection was a little lacking. I like the inclusions, I just feel that, apart from Rainbow Road of course, Wave 5's roster would have been a better send-off. In my previous video, I said, so it's reasonable to assume that since we got pretty straightforward tracks last update, Wave 6 will also have ones more like Rainbow Road to cap it off, ending 2023 on a high note in the same vein that Wave 3 left 2022. And to be honest, I don't think it did. The Mario Kart Battle Pass started to lose its traction near the end of its run. By that time, it had been going on for 2 years, and I think stretching out its release for that long also thinned out its appeal. The game was dragging on, and that is unfortunately easy for a game like Mario Kart where there is only so much to do. I wasn't as excited for the next wave as I was for the last, especially when the only thing revamping it is something from the past. The game was relying on content that had already hit its high tide. You can't really expect it to prosper with that. And keep in mind, this is all for a game that came out in 2014. The main factor in the Booster Course Pass feeling repetitive is that it wasn't the first time Mario Kart 8 got a second life. It's actually the third. The base game released for the Wii U. Then that version got 2 DLC packs before being ported to the Switch, where a couple years later, here we are. Basically, 10 years of the same tracks, the same characters, the same items, and the same gimmicks. That's why the DLC became stale. For me, at least. It didn't feel like there's anything it could truly give anymore. The title has gone on for too long, and trying to give it life through DLC over and over again is just wearing it down. This is why I love what they did with The Legend of Zelda. After Breath of the Wild released, Nintendo had plans for DLC expansions, some of which we saw. However, for the rest, they decided it would be worth more to revamp the concepts into a proper sequel. Tears of the Kingdom. Zelda didn't drag one game out for content, instead opting to revitalize the ideas, flesh them out into their own thing, and give the players an entirely new game with its own experiences.
I fused a mushroom to my shield.
Hey, I'd say it worked. It might not be everyone's favorite, but it was innovative. They invented a new form of physics for it. I'd much rather have that than constantly checking to see if the next update is out. I appreciate the Booster Course Pass for what it is. I could say it delivered on what was promised. A collection of past tracks to revisit in the modern age. But after playing it, making this video and all my other videos on it, I can't help but wonder if this all should have been Mario Kart 9. There is so much to this. Not even just the tracks, but considering the smaller stuff they added alongside them, in total, 48 courses, new characters, a boatload of Mii costumes, implementing or reworking certain mechanics. Guys, they added a music player to a racing game. Nintendo really took the time to build on Mario Kart, and Deluxe has evolved so much from its initial release, let alone the Wii U version. A lot of genuinely great concepts reside here, ideas I would love to see in the next installment. Bundling them all into a DLC pack to throw at the tail end of a decade-old game is a waste. Maps that would have been perfect for the next title are now stuck in 8, and if they are brought into something like Mario Kart 9, you risk the selection being repetitive, which is like my whole argument here. I think I said it best in my very first video. Putting Coconut Mall in the first cup was probably the best choice they could have made, besides just making Mario Kart 9. Mario Kart 8 has hit its peak. What it needs is to pass the torch and allow for a new era of the franchise. It doesn't have to be soon. It doesn't even have to be bigger than Mario Kart 8. It just needs to not be Mario Kart 8. A fresh start, clean slate, whether that be 9 or a reboot of the series. After 10 whole years, the IP needs new experiences. That's the problem with reinventing the past. It's the past. Honestly, maybe the next one shouldn't even have retro tracks. We've had our fill of that, certainly. Mario Kart 8 ended with way more retro tracks than original ones. And going forward, the series should prioritize something it hasn't seen before. And finally, the last topic I just want to mention, my prediction track record. I threw out a handful of random tracks that would have been cool to revisit, but I never properly kept track of which ones actually got added. Going back to the first Booster Course Pass video, out of all the courses I spitballed, here are the ones that got in. A. Bowser's Castle. Even though it's not the specific one I mentioned, I'm still going to count it, because it is, after all, A. Bowser's Castle, Mushroom Gorge, Rock Mountain, and Maple Treeway. What's fun about this one is that I somehow predicted them in the exact order they got added. Waluigi Pinball, for the culture. Boo Lake, I'm also going to count this one. Again, not really aiming for a specific map here. The guess was really just for the style of track that I wanted to see. And, well, Boo Lake is that style. It is a Boo map. Koopa Cape, down to the anti-gravity underwater. That one really surprised me when I first saw it. Imagine anti-gravity underwater. DK Summit and DK Mountain. Another example of me just throwing out general concepts. However, both examples that I used ended up in the DLC. It's like I saw the future. And then, of course, Peach Gardens. In this video, I had thrown out 14 tracks, and 10 happened to come true. Of course, since it was so early, there was more potential to be right, but I'm still amazed at how accurate these guesses were. Unfortunately, that accuracy didn't hold up for long, as both courses I predicted in my second video never came to fruition. What were they? They were, Wario's shipyard, like his shipwreck, Wario's shipwreck, And then what was the other one? I'm gonna have to pull up the video actually, because I legitimately don't remember what it was. It was Peach Beach! I guessed Peach, yeah, that wasn't happening. By this time, it was becoming a safe bet that a city map was going to be in each wave, so I decided to predict what country we would see as well. My pick was Canada, and wave after wave, I held onto this dream, until finally, in wave 5, we got it. This one has to be my favorite prediction, because I was literally spitting nonsense into my mic. I didn't even know there was a Canada map when I said it. It's just really funny, because it's honestly like one of the only good tour tracks too. The next video I only made 4 predictions, and got half of them right. I'm still boggled by how I managed to get Daisy Circuit. I truly was just saying things. Rainbow Road was destined to be in the game. There's no way you build up this DLC and not include the most iconic track from the most iconic Mario Kart. It was a safe bet. Unlike the very last map I suggested, which was an original Rainbow Road course based on the Mario movie. It was an absolute Hail Mary. I knew there was no way in any timeline it was happening. It's just, you know, if there was a small chance it happened, I would have looked like a god, and I was willing to take the risk. Overall, out of the 22 tracks I predicted, 13 were added to the game. They call me Taylor Swift. That's more than half, and considering most of them were last-second thoughts I had for the sake of it, I guess it's endearing to know that a game I spend so much time with is one I could almost accurately predict the future of. Not a very useful skill. Yet. But you already know, when the next installment releases, I'm coming back to my rants from a couple minutes ago to see if I had any foresight there. Oh, and by the way, update on the Kids' Choice Awards. I'm not voting for Haley Steinfeld. Sorry, the only Italian I know is from Mario Kart. Good to know she knows Hebrew, though. That's it. That's the Booster Course Pass. Thank you so much to everyone who followed these videos. They started out as just something dumb to make in between my other stuff, but ended up, you know, evolving, being something to help shape the way I make content on this platform. There's a lot of things I do regularly now that started in these Mario Kart videos. And, of course, there's the endless practice of script writing. I owe a lot of gratitude to these, and in turn, the people who watch them. So again, thank you. I don't really have much else to say. I can't say for certain if this will be my last video on the Booster Course Pass. I'm sure I'll probably come back to it at some capacity. It's Mario Kart. It's what I default to when I have nothing else to talk about. And if I try hard enough, I could probably get like at least 2 more videos out of it. I am very bored. Until then, it will be nice to finally play Mario Kart without having to think about it.